Welcome back to the Ajay Patel show. I firstly want to just quickly apologize because I am recording this late, so I know it's going to be releasing late. My apologies. I have just been a little bit under the weather. I don't know what happened. I finally landed back in LA 24 hours later, went to a brunch, and then just started feeling sick. Started having some nighttime sweats, a little bit of a dry cough, like that nasal congestion where you just sinus pressure all built up in your head. I don't know if it's just like me maybe being around someone that was sick, maybe drinking from a glass that wasn't clean, or just the change in seasons, but I don't think it's fit. I don't think it's COVID. But like I said before, I'm never testing for that shit because it's not going to change the outcome of how I conduct my day to day. So I got to stay true to my true to my word. But I'm definitely turning the corner. If you hear me cough a couple times or pop a cough drop, my apologies. But welcome back to the Ajay Patel show. My name is Ajay Patel, and this is episode 9, which is pretty crazy because we're just one episode away from that 10 mark. You always hear this stat of like, oh, 90% of podcasters quit uh their podcast within the first 10 episodes, and then I think 90% of that 90% quit before episode 20. So we're getting close to that first 90%. Knock on wood for getting to that next 90. Welcome back. I have a handful of topics, including Drake, Rani, my birthday, and that will probably cover us for this episode. But firstly, let's just jump straight into it with the new Drake album. Now, just to preface everything, I am a huge Drake fan, just like pretty much any other guy, right? Huge Drake fan. And I know it's so funny to me that like a lot of, I don't want to say females, but I know a lot of Drake fans get a lot of slack from people because it's like, oh my gosh, why do people love Drake so much? Why do people love Drake so much? Like, oh, he's not that great. He does some weird stuff. Like, oh, he shouldn't be like this person that we idolize and stuff. And it's like, yo, like, shut the fuck up. Like this dude, we've known this dude longer than we've known most of you. Like, this guy has been in our lives since 2008. 2008. And when we were first introduced to that relationship, we had no idea how long it was going to last. No idea. 2008. That means I was in middle school, high school. Yeah, let's say high school. And then instant classic after instant classic from Take Care. Nothing Was the Same. If you're reading this, it's too late. Now we start getting into the college territory and then post college territory with like Views, and I guess Views, I was still in college, but album after album, right? You've had this one artist that's been with us the entirety of our lives, the same way it was for some people. And like, let's say Kanye, right? When people were in high school and Kanye had some of his best albums and it carried him out. I am also a little bit overlap of Kanye, but a lot more of Drake. And so when people say like, "Oh my gosh, like people are too big of Drake fans," it's like, yo, like relax. This relationship has cost me nothing, right? Like I get to listen to the dude's music. I don't have to do anything for him, and it's a win-win in my scenario. And on top of that, if you go back and listen to some of those records, you'll just literally nod your head in amazement, just like, "Damn, this dude really made this shit." Like go back and listen to Nothing Was the Same. And you'll be amazed, astonished even at how good that shit is. He recently came out with an album last Friday called For All My Dogs. And this album was a little bit awaited for. I think the release date got pushed back a little bit. So I do believe people had high expectations. In addition to it's Drake, right? So people have a lot more higher expectations. A lot of people were let down. So I was talking to my brother-in-law about this yesterday, and it's actually been very popular opinion that this album was a letdown. I'm looking at the track list right now. I finally have gotten to listen to this about 2 times through, and I'm not gonna lie, I didn't think it was that bad. Like, I think once one person starts piling on, it's very common to just get a lot more people to be piling on with it. And I'm not too surprised that this album was like, let's say, lackluster, because that's just what happens nowadays, right? Artists come out with albums damn near twice a year because of the frequency of music, that you're not surprised when these albums just don't really hit that mark. Back when albums had to come out every other year, like 2011, Take Care, 2013, which was the next album, Nothing Was the Same. Both of those were amazing. Both of those probably also went through a lot more like what's it called? Like loops or checks and whatever they had to go through to make sure that they were instant classics. I think nowadays these projects that come together, like let's say this one, right, came together in a couple months, it's exactly what you expect it's going to be. And even the last couple of albums, right? Like since what was it before this? It was Her Loss, and then before this it was Certified Lover Boy, CLB. Yeah. Both those weren't great albums. And this one, in addition to it, it's not great, but it's good, right? It's good enough to keep you like, oh, okay, like I got a couple tracks that I can listen to. This shit was 22 songs long. 23? 23 songs long. And I like, let's say, 6 tracks. I just wish he trimmed the fat on a lot of this shit. Like, I don't need to listen to Lil Yachty. I don't really care about Sexy Red or Bad Bunny. Like, Bad Bunny is his own entity. You don't need to be collabing with this dude. And it was just strange, right? Like, Drake, I don't need to hear you rapping in Spanish. I don't need to hear your son on the album. I can do without that. Everyone was making fun of him on that song, I Don't Give a Fuck, with Yeet. And it's like, yo, who the fuck is Yeet, bro? Like, you're making fun of this dude, but he's the one who's putting these smaller artists on. Obviously, like, you have those great tracks like 8 a.m. in Charlotte. I'm going to play it here. Hopefully I don't get copyright. Any any Drake song that has a time and the location he's at is automatically a great song. And one interesting thing that I noticed, when you see a lot of these songs that have a lot more complex beats and a lot more bass, and it's just like, damn, bro, like, you don't need this. Like, you and Lil Wayne, and I call this out because it's like you can really tell the similarities to who you quote unquote grew up under, right? So Lil Wayne signs Drake. You kind of see how them two have a lot more in common than people realize. And Drake doesn't need these complicated beats, right? Like, he is good at making those like cartoons, the songs that you'll hear on the radio, and then also those random songs that were very popular in college. But he just needs a simple beat, and then him just going off on it. Like, any of these songs that have 8 a.m., any time and in location, the song is great. Everyone was kind of talking about like, oh, J. Cole, like owned him on that first person shooter song. Bro, who cares? Like, the dude had one verse in a 23 track album. Of course it's going to be good. Like, when J. Cole's album comes out, I guarantee you're not going to be like, oh, wow, this shit's amazing. And what's more funny is I actually recorded a clip back when the release date was September something. And I actually I edited it out of the pod. And I thought this album was going to be a top 5. I was incorrect, clearly. But I don't think this album is that bad. And if you guys watch the Joe Budden podcast, you'll see that he kind of criticized it a lot, and then Drake responded to it. And there's this whole internet beef that I don't want to get into because I just don't care that much. But if you're Drake and people don't like the album, or you're like getting scrutinized on it, you just got to own up to it. Like, what your standards are. Because of who you are, what we're expecting out of you. Like if Lil Yachty came out with an album that was pretty good, we'd be like, "Oh wow, that's not surprising." Like, wow, I had no idea he could do that. But if you're Drake, let's just put out all the big names, right? Drake, Wayne, Cole, Kendrick. There's a bunch more, but let's just focus on those four. When they come out with an album, it is expected that it is an absolute masterpiece. And when it's not, we pile on them, right? We're like, oh, what the fuck is this shit? This intro, I know a lot of people like this Virginia Beach intro. It was okay. Drake intros are one of the most well known things. Tuscan Leather being the number one, Onward Down. Virginia Beach was maybe in the middle tier of Drake intros. With that being said, I liked the album. And I'm not just saying that to be a contrarian, but I actually didn't mind the album too much. In addition to that, like my boy Chris Breezy's right around the corner, whose album drops in November, and this forcing Kanye West album that's been kind of leaking on TikTok and social media that everyone has been kind of suggesting at random release dates, but nothing has been confirmed. Those two are right around the corner. And on top of all of that, another Drake project will just probably pop up in January or something. Like you guys, like we know this is gonna happen. I just think he's getting a little too much hate for it, but also responding to the hate is also just like, well, you gave us this shit. Getting off of the Drake topic, it was actually my birthday last week. Yeah. So October 5th, which was last Thursday, was my birthday, and I was lucky enough to get to celebrate it at home. It was right off I recorded episode 8. Yeah, so I recorded episode 8. A couple days later was my birthday, and it had been a while since I celebrated it at home. Like I think last year I was in Scotland, and the years before that I would just keep on doing bottle service. And the bottle service shit's played out, right? The whole nightlife, going out to clubs, it's all played out. And so this year, I really wanted to spend it with my parents because, it's not like they're coming to the bottle service. And a lot of times during birthday celebrations, it becomes this thing where it's just like, oh, yeah, I'm probably going to go get drunk with my friends. I'll probably spend maybe 5 minutes with the parents. And, like it's just this weird balance. So I wanted to try to bring it back to the, maybe a little bit more wholesome, fun side of things. So I really didn't do much, honestly. The morning of, I woke up, no one was really home because everyone had work. And my friends, Neha and Akash, sent me a box of, and their young buck, but I don't know if they want me to say his name on here or not. But they sent me a box of those buntinis. And I pretty much had that for breakfast and lunch. And I didn't really do anything else. I was just at home. I did a couple work things. And then at night, I hosted my little wholesome quote unquote party. My sister and her family came over. I had two friends come, and it was, I just keep on saying it. It was wholesome fun, right? So people came over. We had drinks. I ordered pizza. And so firstly, this birthday cost me maybe $100. So that's a steal right there. In addition to that, it felt very like I was going for the 2006 vibes, where it's like you have these family parties that you used to go to all the time, right? You and your family used to go over to some other family's house and you used to eat, play a little game, hang out. Maybe the kids are upstairs and all the grown-ups are downstairs. And then eventually you go home. And that's exactly what I was going for here. Mainly because it's like you don't see this happen much anymore, right? You don't see the quote unquote family house get really filled up. And that's what I was going for, right? Because it's not common anymore, especially with when the kids are all grown up and half of them are married, half of them have kids. Like you don't see those family gatherings anymore. I get it. Your parents will hang out with their friends and stuff like that, but you don't see like the full households come together anymore. So that is one reason that I really wanted to just spend it at home and have no type of big uplift. Because if I was like, oh, Mom, can you cook for 6 people? She would have gone crazy. And then you end up with your mom being stressed out, the kitchen's a mess, all this shit. And I was just like, let's just have a simple little pizza party. Alcohol is, like that shit's free because we already have it at the house. Order a couple pizzas, someone will bring a cake, and that's it. And I really enjoyed it. I had a little trivia game about myself, which is probably a bit narcissistic now that I think about it, but I threw in my sister and my dad because their birthdays are also in October, along with probably the million other people that that you have to celebrate this month. But overall, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Blessed to see another year. I am now finally 29. And yeah, man, just some wholesome fun. So, like I said, I am back in LA and I got here Friday, last Friday, the same day that the Drake album came out. And I finally got to watch the movie Rocky or Rani. Um, Now, obviously, this is for mainly the people that have already watched the movie or maybe even plan to watch it. But Rocky or Rani was probably one of the most raved Bollywood movies I've heard about since I really don't know. Like I probably haven't seen a full length Bollywood movie since Three Idiots or one of the Bajirao Mastanis in theater. And in it finally came out on Amazon Prime. I kind of refuse to watch it in theaters because it's like they're just so long, right? Like this movie was 3 hours long. And I thought about it. Like once I watched it at home, I was like, how would I have done this in theaters? And overall, I get it. The movie was really good. It was a bit ridiculous, but it was really good. And just how it was crafted overall, I cannot complain. Will I watch it again? Probably not. Mainly because of just the duration of it. 3 hours is a long ass time. Like that movie went through so many ebbs and flows. It was just like, Jesus Christ, bro. Like, can we hurry this shit up a little bit? And maybe that's just, having a smaller attention span and things like that. But nonetheless, the movie was amazing. And I've become one of those annoying people to watch movies with nowadays because I kind of overthink things or I try to call things out where it's like, oh, like I see why they did it like this because of this and that. And I don't know if that's something that started once I moved here to LA, but I am one of those annoying people. And I try to kind of hold it back and be like, hey, like, am I being annoying? Like, let me stop if I am. But the movie was ridiculous. And that's what almost made it, not almost made it. It was one of the factors that made that movie so good. Because from the start, right? Like they didn't use a usual storyline. They didn't use the whole like, oh, he's dating a girl that's a different race or a different caste, so therefore the parents are going to hate her and, this and that. They had an absolutely ridiculous concept. Now, I'm not going to spoil anything cuz it'd be hard to for a 3-hour movie, but basically this grandpa he's married and this girl that he hooked up with once upon a time shows up back in his life. Now this grandpa was pretty much bedridden, paralyzed in a wheelchair. And he starts having these random flashes of uh Jamini. And eventually they connect the dots with who she is. They introduce her and next thing you know, he's standing up out of his wheelchair. And he's like, "Oh my gosh, like my love for this lady has brought me out of this state of uh not wanting to live anymore and wow, this is like what the fuck is happening?" Like that is what happens in this movie where you're literally just like, "Wow, some of these concepts are so ridiculous that you kind of you gravitate towards it." Like that's what kind of opens your eyes to the movie. Back when, some Bollywood concepts were so new, those were the things that would also kind of appeal to you, where it's just like, wow, I did not think of this scenario that could happen in someone's life. The music, the colors, the jokes, even the jokes at times, like you'll see those in any Bollywood movie. But it helped that in this movie they were even better. Like, you'll see in the first half that they use all their ridiculous jokes, right? They use this, like, rich boy kind of like, "Oh, he doesn't really know anything. He's just this swole dude that drinks protein shakes and all this shit." They use that concept a lot. But at the same time, it's like, "Oh, but he's still pure of heart," right? Like, he's still a very traditional guy, and that's what's kinda guiding him throughout this movie. So you'll see that they use all this ridiculous humor in the top half, then they get kinda serious in the second half. But at the same time, I can see why this movie works so well. And they use a lot of kind of like those, not flashbacks, maybe almost callbacks, where it's like Karan Johar has been part of so many movies now in his time span, where he can do these small little tricks that have worked in previous movies, um, that he could bring back into these films nowadays, and they still work. I kind of felt that in the funeral scene, in a lot of the songs, and just concepts in general. So overall, on my non-bias scale, I do think the movie was like a 9.5 out of 10. On my bias scale, 8 out of 10. Because the movie was great. It was just long as shit. And it was like a bit ridiculous. But overall, really good. If you haven't seen it, Amazon Prime that thing right now. And yeah, just let me know what you think. And let me know what kind of ridiculous conclusions you can come to about it. I'd love to know that. Now, then, the last things I want to bring to your attention before we bring this episode to a close is firstly, I had a friend that kind of gave me a shout out on his podcast a couple weeks ago, and I have been forgetting to do so. He actually just had a baby boy. So if you're listening to this, my boy Sandeep, I congratulate you and your family. I was actually lucky enough to be on his podcast recently, and that'll be releasing soon. I'll probably link it in this episode or link it on a next episode so you can kind of click straight to it. In addition to that, I am actually going to be moving the release date back to Monday. I had a couple friends kind of just tell me like, "Oh, Mondays work better for them." Even though the whole reason I moved it to Tuesday was cuz I had other friends tell me Tuesday works better for them. But in addition to all of that, the analytics have been working so much better for Monday. And it's just kind of like to start off the week. Tuesdays do work better for like if I procrastinate and shit. But once again, I'm going to be moving this to Mondays. Thank you guys for your patience with me on this week releasing late. And with that being said, my name has been Ajay Patel, and I'll see you next week. Bye.